Bitcoiners, T-Dog, Yo-Yo with the Good Morning Bitcoiners. Indeed, P-Man Van. Good morning, all. Indeed, good morning, all. Good morning, everyone. Good morning and all aboard from Robert. Robert, indeed, it is a good morning, and we are all aboard. Today's thumbnail was a train. Choo-Choo-Choose you. You remember the famous Simpsons card. I choose you. So that's what I had on my mind today. I'm just checking something because my stupid Apple, it's all supposed to work together. Stupid Apple, right? Nothing works. I don't know why. My stupid iPad can't get my stupid notes because I created them in my dumb phone and none of it works now. But that's okay. So we're going to have to read off of the phone today, right? But that's okay. That's okay because guess what? The sun came up and Bitcoin, guess what? Is running perfectly. So all that's left for us to do is talk about what's new, except on my phone this time, not my iPad. And of course, have a coffee, right? I forgot to add the coffee. Have a coffee and talk about what's new. Good morning from Florida, where Bitcoin is saving lives. Florida is in my Moscow time today, so we're going to get to Moscow time. And Bitcoin Graffiti says, New Mexico, hello. So New Mexico is coming up a lot in my life lately. I was watching some shows on New Mexico yesterday. You know the fella I program Bitcoin Magazine's show with, Alex McShane? He just moved to New Mexico. He's lived there before. And he's like living with all of these nuclear scientists now and everything, because it's all the same. It's from the Oppenheimer days. I was just, reading and learning about Oppenheimer yesterday and the past couple of days. I guess that movie's got me all pumped up and just, what happened in that time. I find it quite interesting. And he's an interesting person, Oppenheimer, of course. So suddenly New Mexico is sort of all around my life. So these things happen, right? I had very little understanding or knowledge of anything New Mexican until recently, but now I realize it's a very special place. We don't realize it's one of the oldest US states, right? Anyway, we'll talk about New Mexico another time. You're here for a little bit of Moscow time, I think. So we've got Moscow time really flourishes in the summer because it's all fake news. The newsrooms are empty, no one's around. So it's like extra levels of incompetence and things that don't make sense that make the headlines and things that are just really, really stupid. So we'll end up talking a little bit about Florida because it just came up. It just came up today. I guess the fact checkers who work for these folks. Oh wait, hold on a second. There we go. All right. So this one's pretty good. So Janet Yellen, it all hinges on Janet Yellen's persuasion abilities. Janet Yellen running around the world trying to save the United States and the Biden administration. So she says that Ukraine aid is the best boost for the global economy. That's what she says, right? It's the best, right? It's awesome, right? Just got to give them some money. Things will work out. Now, remember, her major contribution before this public sector stuff, where she's been very successful, her major contribution was the game of what if you give someone a pay raise? Do they work harder or not? And what is the threshold at which they work harder after the pay raise? She was basically just saying, oh, human brains work in a reciprocal fashion. Yeah, you're the head of the Federal Reserve, the Treasury Secretary, no problem, right? This one's pretty good. This is an oldie but a goodie because I've been bit by too many mosquitoes lately. And Ottawa, I'm in Ottawa, real shithole, real shithole. Shithole countries. So I'm in Ottawa right now, and it's in a valley, and it's so full of mosquitoes in the summer. I hate it. It's nothing. Vermont is awesome, right? In the townships, and we don't have bugs. We don't have that stuff, right? The cows eat them all or something. I don't know. We don't got them. But PETA says, do you know you can keep mosquitoes away without hurting them? Did you know that, guys? You don't have to hurt them. Try keeping basil plants nearby. They dislike the smell. Oh, great. Yeah. Don't kill them. Come on. Mosquitoes' lives matter. Ilhan Omar tweeted yesterday, the Earth just broke the record for the hottest day in 120,000 years In fact, we broke it on several separate days. National climate emergency now. So if you didn't know, guys, yesterday was the hottest day in 120,000 years. How did she know? She just knew, guys. She just knew. Okay. So just listen to her. And it's an emergency because it's the hottest day in 120,000 years. Okay. 120. I guess, sometimes I check the weather records. They don't really go back 120,000 years. They usually go back to like 1900, but, maybe someone had the records. Who knows? The Washington Post is telling us that Americans are still better off with more in the bank than before the pandemic. Oh, good. I'm glad the Washington Post is telling us all we're doing much better. Great. Thank you. Here's the Florida ones. They're excellent. Well, maybe I'll get to the floral ones in a second because I'll end with those. This is from the Atlantic yesterday. This is really why I think the Black Lives Matter movement started in the first place. So the racial inequality of sleep. All right. Racial inequality of sleep. Black Americans aren't sleeping as well as whites. Here's why that's a public health problem and what we can do to fix it. Now, I don't know if this is true. Some of our Black viewers have to tell us in America, do you feel the racism at play when you're in bed going to sleep? I don't know. I don't know the answer to it. So I need help. Please tell me if this is true. Should it be in Moscow time? I don't know. These are mysteries. And then we've got my favorite one of the day. This is my favorite. So CNBC and Jennifer Rubin, and CNBC, both of them ran the following. So Jennifer Rubin is from the Washington Post, right? So this was sort of going viral yesterday. A lot of people talking about it. CNBC, these are America's 10 worst states to live in and work in for 2023, and there's a big surprise at the very bottom. So CNBC ranked Texas as the worst state to live in and Oklahoma as the second worst state. And Florida is also in the top 10 worst states to live in. In case you were wondering, Florida people saying you're saving the world, CNBC says, no, you're actually living in the worst place. All 10 of the worst places are Republican red states, though, in case you're wondering. And the top 10 best states, guess who, right? All Democrat states. Weird that so many people are leaving those blue states to move to red ones. Maybe that's kind of weird. But according to the Washington Post, they're not actually moving, but maybe they are. So Jennifer Rubin, who is, a pretty sort of established veteran over at the Washington Post, she says, Florida might pay for MAGA cruelty and know-nothingism. Right, that's a headline today. Florida has become not where woke died, but rather where empathy, decency, and kindness go to die. And it is also killing their economic future. That's from Jennifer Rubin. So any of you idiots saying that, Florida is like where freedom is happening, you're not reading the Washington Post, right? This guy, King Mansa Musa, what are you talking about, bro? Right? Where Bitcoin is saving lives? No. Oh, but hold on. When she was citing their economic future getting killed, it already got corrected this morning. So she wrote it and it had to get corrected immediately. So she made a little mistake. Maybe this has something to do with summertime. And like I said, the people aren't around. But a correction, a previous version of this article mischaracterized Floridian state-to-state migration in 2021. According to the Census Bureau, more people moved into Florida than any other state that year. This version has been corrected. So she just kind of got it wrong when she said that almost 1 million people moved to Florida. She made and wrote the whole article with the actual punchline being that their economic future is going to kill. And the punchline was that 1 million people left Florida. So she got it wrong. Okay, she got the million in wrong. It was 1 million out. But maybe the rest of the article is still right. I don't know. You tell me, King Mansa Musa. You tell me how things are going in Florida. Tell me if after you read those articles and heard that Moscow time, if things are going right. So there you go. That's what's going on. So the theme of today is Choo-Choo-Choosing, right? See, this is the problem with the stupid thing. I got to put my head down to read it all the time. I don't get I normally have a stand. See, this is how I roll. I got a stand. I got all kinds of stuff. Let me see if the image, no, it's still not there. Doesn't feel like updating. It's just not into it. It's just not into it. Not into doing it. Piece of garbage. All right, we'll keep doing our best here. The theme today is choosing, choices, right? Where does choice come from? You know, we have the illusion of free will as human beings, but nevertheless, it's not completely free. Usually our choices are somewhat limited, right? We have choices, but those choices can be false choices. They can be choices that were directed towards you. We don't know how free exactly they are and how much latitude we have in choosing this. Still mysteries of humanity, right? We're not quite there in understanding how free will works and how our choices work, but nevertheless, human choice is a major motivating factor in how society plays out. And Jimmy Song was reviewing Seyfedian's book, The Principles of Economics. And he wrote a little Twitter note here about that. And I want to just take some of the more interesting pieces out of that. The point of the book, first of all, of Seyfedian's new book, according to Jimmy, now I would imagine Jimmy has good information. I bet you he's spoken to Seyfedian about this a few times. So Seyfedian said that he intended to create the book he wished he had at 18, and it seems he's on track to deliver an accessible introduction to Austrian economics. So he does a chapter 1 review here, and he says the fundamental building blocks of economics are, in fact, human action. Seyfedian argues that the essence of economics lies not in aggregate statistics, but in individual human actions. Unlike atoms that behave predictably, humans have diverse goals, making the tendency to treat them as a static collective amidst changing circumstances a serious mistake. Interestingly, Seyfedian notes that Keynesians' preference for quantitative approach mimics hard sciences, driven by a desire for the prestige associated with subjects like chemistry and physics. The pursuit led to unproven assertions that have become dogma and harmful economic frameworks today. Seyfedian argues that isolating human action for quantitative analysis is unfeasible, as actions are inherently embedded in their social context. No lab can replicate the complex, multifactorial outcomes of individual actions. Hence the constant need to update Keynesian theories. The ease with which these are manipulated after the fact to account for any phenomena removes their predictive power, undermining their value as knowledge. Lastly, Seyfedian contrasts Keynesian Austrian approaches to the issue of minimum wage, which we're not going to talk about. But really, everything comes down to this thing about predictive power, how choices are at play. Now, what we describe economics as here is very Austrian school. You know, the whole reason why we even call the show The Breakup is we're talking about the relationships we have with money. We all love money. Who doesn't love money, right? We all love money. That's human nature. That's part of this baked in aspect of what we're like. We love money and we're in a relationship because we love it, right? So what Bitcoiners are often talking about is the character and nature of the money that you're in love with has a major effect on the choices you make. The system that the money represents has a major effect on how you make choices, and might even be the part that helps us explain where free will starts and stops, right? Because given the choices that are flowing from the type of money that you have in the case of fiat, right? You're often dealing with what Jimmy and Seyfedian mentioned here. You're dealing with these models that are trying to explain what happened, trying to put some form of cost benefit statistical analysis on it, hard rules that come out of these things. But in the end, those themselves limit some of these choices, right? And the kinds of choices you can make with different money are just different choices, right? So you have a wide degree of variability that comes from these things. And the predictive power, I think, is also important, which is why Bitcoiners are thriving so much right now, because Bitcoiners are understanding this nature of money more and more, and that the choices are different given one circumstance and one money and another circumstance and other money. Once you understand that the menu of choices out there are totally altered by the type of money you have, you can start to see what's at play, and you can start to see what we're fighting for. And so you can see excellent examples in this right now, right? Like the the desire that humans have to be healthy and wealthy is non-negotiable, right? Humans are going to want to feed themselves. They're going to want ego fulfillment. They're going to want to feel safe and secure. Of course, fear is the number one motivating factor for humans, and completely overwhelms any other cognition if you're presented with dangerous circumstances, right? So world war or hunger or any of these things help prioritize in a person's mind what they need to satisfy and fill first. And it's very difficult to turn this into any rules other than fear is the most persuasive factor when making choices, right? Fear is above almost anything. Only sex, the immediate promise of sex, can beat that, and that's not in every circumstance, right? But in general, fear is the easiest to tap into, the easiest motivating factor. And again, because it will reprioritize all of your other choices that you have to make, and make that choice which takes away the fear the number one priority, it's heavily used in psychological manipulation because it actually is able to achieve cognitive closure, right? You're able to end your worry about something when you remove the dangers and you remove the fears. So most of those fears are driven by a loss of health or wealth in some way, right? Physical fear, the fear of poverty, the fear of losing money. All of these things will certainly help motivate people. We see these things in a lot of experiments, right? Gambling has a lot of psychological aspects, sunk costs, things that keep people at a gambling table for a long time. You can see all these psychological motivations inside of it, right? That don't look rational at all. These are usually terrible choices. Indeed, Morgan Housel had a really runaway best-selling book during the pandemic called The Psychology of Money, and he's talking exactly about this, right? He's talking exactly about what Safety and Jimmy Song are talking about, that weirdly we teach economics as like a math thing, like statistics and all that, but as I am fond of saying here on the Breakup, when we're talking about economics, when we're talking about all this stuff, we are talking about numbers, so you'll get confused that it could be math, but we're not talking about math, right? We're just not. We are talking about psychology. We're talking about the psychological engine that is economics, the psychological engine that does propel the world forward. And either it does it in an efficient way that makes people healthy and wealthy, or it doesn't. And that psychological engine is what we're always contrasting here, that the psychological engine that is the US dollar is becoming less and less capable of securing financial relationships, of propelling commercial relationships into the future, of producing things that are useful. And you can already start to see this stuff playing out. Just look at this is the BlackRock story from today, right? So remember when BlackRock was out there virtue signaling and saying, oh, right, we're ESG leaders, right? And Larry Fink was everywhere saying ESG. Now he's gone into Bitcoin. And then yesterday, an amazing thing happened, which is that Saudi Aramco, the largest oil company in the world. I mean, we're talking about all kinds of large oil companies here, so I'm not exactly positive it's the largest. My impression is that it is. So now BlackRock has named the Aramco CEO Amin Nasser to its board, which I think completely ends this ESG debate in all the ways that we would like to see. So the other thing that it underlines, though, is that BlackRock, like anyone else, is interested in their own wealth preservation and their own financial health, and are clearly pivoting. If you look at what Larry Fink has been saying lately, he's been talking about the US debt being a problem. Basically, the choices that the US government has made over the past little while are coming back to haunt them. And indeed, I don't think he's buying Janet Yellen's line that the best economic aid in the world could be Ukraine military support, right? I don't think he's exactly buying that story. So you're starting to get, I think, important divisions within within the players on the board, right? And we can't deny BlackRock is a player on the board, which is why the ETF application is so interesting to Bitcoiners, and why this new relationship with Aramco is another sign that the health and wealth direction of the largest power companies in the world and the largest financial companies in the world are moving in line with what Bitcoiners think, and not in line with what the Joe Biden administration thinks, or what Janet Yellen thinks, or what a bunch of bureaucrats who want to keep us from the hottest day in 120,000 years, according to Ilhan Omar, right? When you're saying that it's the hottest day in 120,000 years, what you're really saying is be afraid about something we just made up, and now give us some, choose to give us some control or authority over either energy or economics. And don't worry, it won't be the hottest day in 120,000 years once you give us that control. So, and the same conversation around these systems, these psychological engines that propel us forward or not, or bring us to a brick wall, can be seen in the Aramco story, BlackRock making choices, choosing, I think, a Bitcoin future recently, right? So I think you're starting to see energy companies and major financial institutions decouple, separate their money from the state, which is a very good thing, right? A very good development if you separate their money from the state. That's the beginning of the separation of money and the state, right? Which is what Bitcoin ultimately can fulfill. So the other story would be this one about Russia getting out of the grain deal. So if you guys haven't seen that this morning, Russia had a deal to get Ukrainian grain to markets from last year. So that's what they were doing, right? Russia said, okay, we're going to let you guys use this port. Whatever yield comes out of the Ukrainian fields, you can actually sell on the global market, and we're not going to put any military things around it. We're not going to cause you any trouble, right? Let me get this chair a little bit more aligned for the autists in the crowd. Oh, am I doing it backwards? Yeah, I am there. Could be my autism. Now I've screwed it up more. Who cares? Okay, I'm done with that. So this grain deal, right, means that Russia stopped it, so the Ukrainian grain is not going to make it to global markets. Now, some people today are saying, oh, this is going to lead to worldwide famine. It might, but let's give a few details. Putin actually gave an interview about this coming out of the grain deal. So I've got the translation here, and I'll tell you a little bit about what's going on. So in this deal, so Eric Zimmerman says, fascinating interview given the gaps in our knowledge currently. Starts with the grain deal and ends with Wagner. Subtitles roughly accurate. So he's talking about this interview that Putin gave. Kathleen Tyson gives her resume of it. She says, Ukraine's grain export deal expired today. 3 days ago, Putin explained why. 97% of the grain went to Europe, 3% to poor countries. Probably a lie, but maybe not. West never kept its promises in Russia's interest. That's true. UN powerless to mediate. West are feckless, money-printing, lying wastrels. Que bono, US farmers, Europe self-harms again, is her conclusion. And indeed, I can imagine this is excellent news for US farmers and Canadian farmers. We can produce the grain on this continent rather easily. But listen to his words about why this happened. So first of all, he's the one saying about the 3% goes to the poor people and 97% goes to Europe. I just feel like that's not true, but it could be, right? It could be. So I don't have any proof, but let's be honest, Putin can bend the truth like anyone, right? But what he's saying here checks out with me, so I'll explain. So what he's saying is that prices of food around the world are going through the roof, and his explanation is that it's a failure of the West to properly invest in energy. He says they just didn't do it. They're stupid, right? He says they spent all this money and they got the opposite of what they expected from the energy sector. They invested in renewables, right? He says they were not made in a timely manner and at higher prices. So he's probably talking about what the Germans did with the liquid natural gas, which was an amazing thing. You got to give the Germans credit for building all that natural gas capacity once the war started. But don't forget, my old alma mater in France, a professor at the Sciences Po in France, has been saying for a while that most of Europe's super smart energy, Greta, how's she feeling policies were all Russian disinformation. It was all Russians saying, no, you don't want nuclear. You don't want nuclear. You want wind. You want solar. And also a pipeline just in case there's no wind, right? So a lot of people think the anti-nuclear sentiment in Europe was 100% cultivated by Putin and economic interests that Putin controls in order to make sure that Europe was not clever and building nuclear reactors, which is why the French are going crazy with it. The Belgians talking about it now, which is why the Dutch people might be doing it, right? We'll see. Of course, we're going to be talking about that at Bitcoin Amsterdam, October 12th and 13th in Amsterdam. And we're going to be taking a strong look at some of these European policies. So that's what he says, the energy stuff. But here's what he says, and it's pretty visual about why the food prices, it's not just energy, he says. It's also that from the world market, with a shovel full of money that they printed, and they shoveled the money into their own countries and bought all the food. So they shoveled money into their own countries so that people can buy food, and that left the poor countries in difficult situations. So the situation on the world food and energy markets, he says, are the result of the pandemic approach that the Americans took and basically printed too much money, gave people too much spending power, and shoveled the food into their own mouths by shoveling money at the problem. And is that true? It might be. It looks pretty true, right? The idea that Americans are buying up a lot of the excess food, it looks similar to the energy debate, right? What happened with energy was the Germans, who don't have a lot of options, had to buy all the liquid natural gas on the global market. As I understand, you can't buy a future supply of liquid natural gas on planet Earth until 2027. I think everything's bought until 2026. Now that's an old number that I'm going on, but that's what I've seen right now. Again, I've not verified this. I have no idea if that's true, but that's what I saw. And it makes sense. It looks like the Germans are going around the world buying as much energy as they can, as much liquid natural gas as they can. They have storages. They're buying it years into the future. Not just Germany, several other countries. Americans are selling a lot of it. And because of that, you're not getting any of this stuff in India. India is selling their own supplies of energy to rich countries and making up the difference with other stuff, because they can, of course, still burn coal very easily in these parts of the world. They don't have Greta to worry about so much in India. I know China doesn't give much of a care about what Greta thinks. They're not so interested in her feelings. I know they're not. I know for a fact China and India are not making policies based on Greta's feelings like Europe is. This grain thing, right? Exactly as he says, this is a health and wealth question, right? The financial system that the world has used for years, and we always have to give credit to the US dollar, right? I never want to be one of these people who says it was terrible from the start. We can't forget that the US dollar has done amazing things since it was created. First in history things, right? And we have been able to increase the health and wealth of the world overall by the US dollar. But it is such an imperfect system made up of so many humans, exactly as Jimmy Song was saying here, that tried to quantify things like it's science, that tried to run the US dollar the way you would run the Manhattan Project or some engineering project. But it's not an engineering project. It is a project that put a bunch of humans together with a ton of systems that are some of the most complex the world's ever seen. The American military industrial complex, the propaganda machine, the courts, the financial markets, all of this was required to keep the US dollar system running. And all of it is too complicated for anyone to understand. Who could possibly make choices about all of these things and act like they're in control of the economy, right? You can't. It's always been farcical to hear the news say, well, if politicians can just get the economy rolling, right? Of course they can't. They can do a few things that can juice the market, but there's always a give and take, right? Now, Bitcoiners understand this engineering problem better than anyone, because Bitcoiners work with a market, with a network that is actually an engineering marvel, an engineered network where we actually can engineer money from a computer science and cryptographic point of view. Now, that doesn't change the fact that Satoshi and the system acknowledge that humans make choices and that those choices are the bedrock of how the system can propagate forward. So, of course, Bitcoin, as we know, allowed humans to just be themselves, right? We can be selfish. We don't have to act in a special way. We don't have to evolve in order to get going with Bitcoin. We don't have to be some enlightened group of people. Bitcoin accepts us as who we are, everyone in the world, as selfish, self-motivated people that want to increase our own personal health and wealth, right? You know, all of you who come in the morning, I love you all. We love coming for breakfast. We love having coffee. We love talking about all this stuff, right? But if you boil things down, of course, I'm interested first and primarily in my own health and wealth. I love sharing information. I love teaching. I love all of those things. But the thing that motivates me, of course, is you know, my own health, my own wealth. This is very healthy for me to do, to get up every day and make predictions and be consistent, and I get a lot of satisfaction out of that, and it's why I choose to do it every day, right? As much as I love you all, and I do, I do, right? But we make our own choices, and for me to say predictions out loud, it increases my own ability to manage my mental health, for example, and to know, you know, keep track, let's say, diary of what I'm thinking. Not a significant point to make, but just letting everyone know that Bitcoin does accept us for who we are. All of us are flawed. All of us are, you know, interested primarily in our own health and wealth. Now, you get to a certain point of self-actualization that you can actually start really prioritizing other people and other things. And of course, I am very satisfied by trying to teach, trying to share, trying to shine a light on things, right? So that's all for real. But inevitably, we all want our own health and wealth to be increased, which is what Bitcoiners are betting on, right? We're betting on this. We're betting on individuals making choices that increase their own health and wealth, and allow them collectively, with a better system, to increase the health and wealth of the entire world. Because the choices we're getting on the old system are stupid, and they brainwash us and camouflage a million other things that we can't see because they give us the sense of false choices. You know, you look at this case right now, and this is where you can really start to see where Bitcoiners and normies, let's call them, are diverging greatly, right? And it's the election integrity questions, right? The election integrity questions. So, you know, health and wealth of Americans has been predicated for years on American institutions being the best in the world. You know, there's a quote by Dostoevsky. I'm going to butcher it. It's not even close to what the actual quote is, but it's a pretty good frame to understand where you know, people get these ideas, and it's called the way each individual European country gets their arrogance from. Right. So he made a point that Russians get their arrogance from the certainty that they know nothing and nobody knows anything, but they're the only one who knows something because they've acknowledged they know nothing. Germans get their arrogance from the opposite, right? That if they put their mind to it, they can understand anything. The Italian gets his arrogance from the certainty that he enjoys life the most, can lose himself in the moment, and take pleasure in the most things. The French person gets his arrogance from the certainty that everyone in the room is staring at him and wants to be him and is jealous of him. And the Englishman gets, and I would say the American in some ways, so this is an old quote, but relevant. The British person gets his arrogance from the certainty that his kingdom is the best organized. And for many years, Americans gained their arrogance from the certainty that their kingdom or their republic was the best organized. They inherited that arrogance from the British, and they upgraded the British arrogance, right? The British were like, we love our king, right? And the Americans were like, that kind of sucks, we can do better. And so Americans for years, and if you even heard, you know, what was it that Jerome Powell said the other day that made me, I couldn't even get the words out of my mouth here in the breakup when I was reading it to you. It was that the US dollar will remain the most important thing in financial asset as long as American institutions remain rule of law and democratic. And he was going on about all in 2023. calling America the beacon of rule of law, right? That's what they're hinging this whole future of the dollar on, right? As long as America remains the most democratic country in the world, everything's going to be fine, right? Don't worry about it. But Bitcoiners have known for a long time that we don't got no democracy here. It ain't working, the dog ain't hunting, and it ain't what they say it is. And we know simply because we've looked at this engineering network. This comes down to those choices again. We understand that Bitcoin, right, is a bunch of choices and trade-offs that happened in order to have a credible financial network. Now, the trade-offs were between convenience and credibility, right? How convenient can the network be, right? The stable coins and Tron and Ripple, right? They're opting for convenience. Now, I get it. If they're competing against Visa, you want convenience, right? That's your game. But Bitcoin was not competing against convenience of Visa. It was competing against the corruption of the financial system using propaganda, the war machine, financial policies, obfuscation, complexity theater, all of these things. And Bitcoiners said, we want a credible system. We're going to trade convenience for credibility because credibility is worth more. And just the nature of the engineering of the network, you don't really get to choose maximum credibility and maximum convenience. It doesn't work that way. There are trade-offs, and we've understood those trade-offs as we tried to scale Bitcoin, and all the debates on the actual network calibration that we had, the big block debates, all of that stuff. Every debate around scaling was about this trade-off, convenience and credibility. Now, it just so happens that elections actually look identical. The engineering trade-offs for election systems are identical to Bitcoin. And we've understood that for a long time, right? So when Bitcoiners were faced with some of the stuff that happened in 2020 in America, they had a better understanding. They were on a more stable footing and didn't have to choose between believing what Trump said or believing what Biden said, believing what anyone said. We were able to have a look at this system and we'd say, well, they chose convenience. They chose vote, because of the pandemic, they chose vote in, and that reduced the credibility. That just did it. It just reduced the credibility. Whether you like it or not, it did that, right? Whether you think 2020 was a fair shake or not, the way elections moved because of the in-person mail-in balloting, because of the actual choice that was made for convenience, they made an election system that lacked credibility. It's a trade-off, and you don't get to choose both, right? So it turns out that Patrick McHenry, who some people call the Bitcoin congressman, right? It used to be Mitch Mulvaney, but it looks like Patrick McHenry is taking over the role. He ended up not being able to make it. He was supposed to speak at Bitcoin 2023 in Miami, but it was the debt ceiling vote, so he wasn't allowed to leave DC, sort of last minute thing, so he missed our show. I was invited to a fundraiser for him. He's organized fundraisers at my shows before. I've met him before. He wears a little bow tie. He's a North Carolinian congressman. Seems like a great guy. So what he's doing now, so remember, he's been pushing a lot of Bitcoin bills and this kind of stuff, right to use Bitcoin. Here's a new one that he's coming out. McHenry co-sponsors legislation to bolster election integrity. It is vital that Americans have confidence in our elections. I am proud to co-sponsor legislation that will bolster election integrity while upholding individual states' responsibility to administer them. Now, again, I'm not here to tell you what this bill says and it's going to be good. I don't know. I haven't read it, right? What I'm just trying to point out is that Bitcoiners are working on things like this, right? Election integrity. Is any like fiat monster out there saying, oh, we need election integrity, right? Because if you don't protect the elections in America, the health and wealth, Powell's right? He doesn't know how wrong he already is, but the premise is correct, right? That if America doesn't have these institutions functioning, the US dollar won't make it, right? And not only will the US dollar not make it, the health and wealth of Americans won't make it. And now I'm not a believer that democracy is the thing that brings you freedom. This is mythology. It's not true. Individual action is what freedom is, and things that help you actuate individually are what freedom is all about. So I'm not waiting on Superman here. I'm not waiting on some politician to come and fix everything and all of that stuff. No, that's not even what I'm saying. What I'm saying is Bitcoiners understand which choices are being removed from your menu of choices and which ones have to be there. And choices of who we vote for to represent us in this flawed system are really important. If we don't have a choice there, we're in big, big trouble. And a lot of people haven't had that choice in a while. So, you can see this stuff sort of build up, and you can see the appetite that Americans have for their own health and wealth becoming expressed in more ways. And you can see the propaganda on the other side trying to convince Americans that their health and wealth is greater. This one's hilarious. And Bitcoiners have been picking up on this for a while. Now, remember what we said here on the breakup from almost day one when Elon took over and brought the community notes in, that community notes was going to be one of the most amazing innovations you've ever seen, because that's how fake news operates. It removes context from things. And community notes is like a context reinvigorator, right? It re-injects context into things. So the president, right? The president comes out and he tweeted yesterday, right now, real wages for the average American worker is higher than it was before the pandemic, while lower wage workers seeing the largest gains. That's Bionomics. So both Walker America and the guy Swan saying, so he got community noted immediately. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. He releases that, gets community noted, right? The tweet's claims about real wages contains a factual error. When the pandemic lockdowns began, real wages adjusted for inflation were $11.15. As of now, real wages are $11.05. So real wages remain lower, not higher than before the pandemic. And remember that increased wages are the cause, according to the Federal Reserve. That's what they're fighting against, right? They don't want what Biden is saying here. So there is a kind of war, right? We're going to follow this war between the Fed Reserve and Biden, because that's why Janet Yellen, by the way, is out trying to get people to buy the T-bills and fund this latest round of spending, because I don't think the Federal Reserve wants to be the only buyer of more of these T-bills. They're trying to decrease their balance sheet, but they might get forced into it. So we'll see. So Walker America, that's the crypto couple fella, says, getting community noted for your lies. That's Bionomics. The guy Swan also had a nice note on it. Let me find it. Where did I keep it? No, I missed it. So anyway, so the guy Swan also said, his favorite thing, I guess, I forget what the tweet was. I don't know why it's not here, but something along those lines, that it's his funniest thing when they get community noted, like we've been saying for a long time. Major problem, right? So we got elections getting better. We got Bionomics getting community noted, that people are recognizing they're not getting healthier and wealthier. And the grain deal, really, again, health and wealth of the world diminishing because of choices that American institutions made for the dollar and for our own spending. Not to say that Americans should have gone starving for other people. They might have to. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see if we stop eating bread this autumn and send it all to the rest of the world. I'd do that, right? I could cut out bread and flour for the rest of the year if it's going to help them. So the next one here, again, is on choices that we make, and this whole thing that Elon did with community notes has obviously gotten a lot of attention. And, again, reinvigorating context, helping us make informed choices, helping us understand what our menu of choices are, not limiting our menu of choices so that we get sort of bamboozled. Important stuff. And it turns out that the FTC, so that's the Federal Trade Commission, is not so happy about Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter. And it turns out they've gone pretty off script here. So Adam Scrabble. So Adam Scrabble is one of these guys that mentioned a few times. He says brilliant stuff sometimes, and I keep him on board. I follow him. He says other stuff that I totally disagree with, and he triggers me, and I can get some form of cognitive dissonance from what he says. So he said dumb shit about Balaji, right? Balaji's not going to pay. He's a scammer and a grifter. This was the BitSignal bet that Balaji made for $1 million. He said Balaji wasn't sincere, so he was wrong about that. Balaji paid. So I don't always know what he's up to, and I'm not going to mind read him, right? All I know is sometimes he says weird shit that I don't get. But maybe I just don't get it. And sometimes he does other great things. And this is one of those other great things. So I have a lot of respect for his cognition, capacity, I just don't always know what game he's up to, but I'm a fan. So he gave an excellent breakdown on his blog here about the FTC and its actions against Twitter. And he says nobody expects the American Inquisition. So he's saying here that there's a form of inquisition against Elon and his acquisition of Twitter from the Biden administration. So what he's saying is that the Biden regime is using the Federal Trade Commission to cripple Elon Musk, Twitter, and you. It's a war, and their side has an army of bureaucrat terminators on the government payroll. So what they're doing is getting them caught up in all kinds of crazy actions, right? So lots of letters, lots of motions, lots of this and that. They've even bullied Ernst & Young, their independent assessor designated under consent order between Twitter and the FTC to evaluate the company's privacy, data protection, and information security program. And they felt as if the FTC was trying to influence the outcome of the engagement before it had even started. And recent sworn testimony details how the FTC, through a series of interactions with Ernst & Young immediately after Elon Musk acquired Twitter, attempted to co-opt EY's independent assessment order in order to generate evidence of deficiencies in Twitter's. Let me just see if I'm getting some comments. Okay. I just got a note from someone. I'm just making sure my audio is coming through. I wasn't up to date on the I wasn't up to date on the commentary. Whoops. Let me know if the audio has been coming in okay, by the way, guys. My connection isn't quite as strong out here, so I worry sometimes. So they were trying. So this is the Ernst & Young, right? One of the big four auditors, saying here that the FTC is more or less corrupted, right? So they Ernst & Young said very specific types of procedures that they expected Ernst & Young to follow and perform conveyed expectations about what the results should be before Ernst & Young had even begun any procedures. The FTC was so adamant with Ernst & Young, conveying that this is absolutely what you will do, and this is going to occur, and you'll produce a report at the end of the day that would be negative about Twitter, that senior EY leaders feared that if Ernst & Young resigned as the independent assessor, the FTC would take exception to Ernst & Young's withdrawal and create other challenges to Ernst & Young over time. A private litigant who engaged in such conduct might well be facing charges of witness tampering. As the plaintiff in this civil enforcement action, the FTC should not receive preferential treatment. There simply is no way to square the striking record of bias recounted above, along with other evidence described in this motion. So just to give a sense of what they're doing to Musk and Twitter, here's the context. Mr. Musk acquired Twitter. The FTC has issued 16 demand letters to X-Corp, a rate of approximately one letter every other week. A stark contrast to the approximately 20 demand letters the FTC issued in the decade-plus period it oversaw Twitter's compliance with the prior consent order. So 28 letters that they wrote to Twitter in 10 years, and now it's 16 letters in a couple of months, right? A couple of months. So again, the choices that are being made here are really about limiting your choices, right? That's what Adam Townsend is saying here, right? That it's taking away individuals' ability to even know what their choices are, right? So again, he says they're trying to cripple Elon Musk, Twitter, and you. They're trying to cripple you by removing your understanding of which choices are out there, which is exactly what Twitter is being successful at with community notes, as we predicted, right? So there you go. We've got, lots of choices. We've got, it looks like anyway, important choices that are now being collectively understood, which will, I think, lead people to believe and understand more greatly or more clearly that the type of money you have, that the way we make commercial relationships in order to make people healthier and wealthier, the type of money you have that goes into making these commercial relationships, that goes into the choices that would be better for everyone and individually, can be found actually in the type of money you have. And this contrast of health and wealth is going to be obvious to everyone because Bitcoiners are going to win the health and wealth contest. And by winning the health and wealth contest, you're going to draw more people to make similar choices to you and stop with these limited choices that the US dollar must have, exactly as Jimmy Song and Saifuddin argue here, that they've got to change, they've got to readjust predictions, they've got to alter the things. Like even look at this case of Robert F. Kennedy, right? This is exactly how it works, right? So right now with Robert F. Kennedy, with what he said about the Ashkenazi Jews, now there's, I've got Kaneko Substack saying this is an NIH study that comes to the same conclusions, right? This is an NIH study according to Kaneko the Great, right? I read a bit of it. What he says is the National Library of Medicine published a study that found SARS-CoV-2 binds more strongly with ACE2 variants in European, South Asian, and African populations than in East Asians and Ashkenazi Jews. So the abstract is the susceptibility of different populations to SARS-CoV infection is not understood. Here we combined whatever variant. Now, look, I can only understand a bit of this stuff, right? I'm not telling you that I know what is in this study and that I understand, but they have a infograph that shows who's got the ACE2 variants and who's been susceptible to COVID, right? Just plain and simple. So Kaneko the Great asks, why would the NIH publish Robert Kennedy's anti-Semitic conspiracy theory? And indeed, you already get the families, right? The families of RFK. Joe Kennedy III. My uncle's comments were hurtful and wrong. I unequivocally condemn what he said. This is about the Ashkenazi thing. He's got his sister who's also condemned him. Joel Pollack here says the Kennedy family got the memo from the party. They are attacking RFK Jr. for something that he didn't actually say. It's the mark of totalitarian systems that they are able to exploit family and intimate relationships to persecute dissidents on the basis of false accusations. Now, just look at what's happening here, right? What did Kennedy say? Now, this is the context removal, can't make a choice thing, right? He said maybe, could be, right? Did he say is? Of course not, right? He is simply putting up an example of what could happen and talking about it. And these guys come out and say, you made a choice, right? And this is what it is. But if they don't force you to choose between seeing Kennedy as a kook or a hero, he's not a hero for saying this. This is just what people are talking about, right? This is like a normal conversation. He's bringing up a normal conversation at dinner, talking about what the research says, right? I don't think he's out there pushing what the research says. He's just saying this is research that was produced and this is what people are saying. Totally fair point. Now people come out and say, oh, right, he's either a conspiracy whack saying the Jews created it in order to not be affected by it, right? And you can see this stuff going out all over the place now. So it's limiting your choices. It doesn't let you choose how to interpret what Kennedy said. The way to, the options to interpret what Kennedy said are great. He is a kook. He's up to date on all the science and has all the answers, or he's just bringing up subjects that we want to talk about, maybe, right? So Bitcoiners are capable of choosing which reality to accept. And because of that, Bitcoiners are only going to increase their health and wealth. And indeed, individual choices will be what shapes the future here. So now I got a shit ton of comments. I'm not going to get to all of them, but let me see where we're at. Let me see. It's long today. We love it, guys. Love all these comments. All right. Okay. Let me get back here. Nick says, bro, I just watched the premiere of the movie. Wow. I didn't know you could actually watch that movie yet. Lucky guy. Looks good. There was also a Netflix series about the Manhattan Project I used to watch. Yeah, I want to see. I would watch that too. Good morning from Kentucky. Yeah, good morning. Love my visit to New Mexico when I was a kid. Yes, niggas, it was absolutely awful. I can't. Yeah, I probably won't go. Yeah, I'll just check out the visuals. I don't need to see it. You're right. I'm not that excited. I went to the first movie in the theater of my life, and it's in my life. What am I talking about? I used to go to movies all the time. First movie since the pandemic the other day, and it was good. I like Mission Impossible. I enjoyed it. Bonjour. I would like to see The Sound of Freedom, but I'm not. I can't put myself in that mental state. I know what's happening, by the way, right? And I'm not doubting, blah blah blah. Mosquitoes carry modified viruses. I think so. V. I don't tend to worry about it too much because I live so far north in Canada that the mosquitoes are dumb by the time they get here. Do you guys ever notice that? This is a funny little anecdote. So I have part of my family, big academics, and I'm not an academic, even though little things I've done in my life have driven them nuts. Like I got the biggest scholarship in Canada. And not really like I'm not that serious about this stuff when I was a law student. So that triggered them. But another thing, I moved to Korea very young, and not my brother-in-law, but family was moving to Indonesia a couple years later. And I was giving him tips, right? And I said, "You're not going to believe it. The mosquitoes are so fast." And I'd found out that it was actually the heat that the mosquitoes live in that allow them to get better reflexes, more or less. And that cold air mosquitoes are dumb and slow, because mosquitoes are no trouble to kill in Canada. Even in the hottest days, they're stupid. You can take them out of the air with your fingers, right? But it's not like that in the warm places in the world. And I told him this, and of course he was a know-it-all. He was laughing, and it was like, "Yeah, right, man," right? And of course he goes to Indonesia and just gets destroyed, right? Because I was like, you're just not going to believe it. And of course I was right. So the mosquitoes, if you're going to do mosquito warfare, don't worry about it in Canada, because if you get bit by, there's so many, it's possible, but they're not sending us their best. Put it that way. They're not sending us their best mosquitoes. I'm not worried about mosquito warfare in Canada. Other places I probably would be, though. I don't want to get bit by a mosquito in Florida these days after Bill Gates released all his mosquitoes. We don't want that. The climate panic people never yell when the weather is colder than usual. No, then the feint. It's always the same. "Oh, weather's not climate. Come on," right? They love it. That is one of the most gaslighty things out there, by the way, right? You don't bite on that. Don't bite on that one. These people are broken brains. Some of these people can't be saved, by the way. Made. You got to make them. Made. Sleep is not racist. I can barely get enough each night. Yeah, well, they said it's racist, guys. Come on. Well, it might be true that the black population carries more trauma and hence doesn't sleep well. The framing, though. Yeah. Pardon me, Bitcoin graffiti. Correct. I'm not trying to. Sometimes with Moscow time, understand it's more just the framing, right? Some of these are true, right? I've said it. I usually say it if I do think it might be true, and the sleeping one could be the case. Could be. So, Florida allows breathing oxygen for free. 100% false. The recycling guy says, "I slept like a rock last night." Well, there you go. I don't buy into the goofy propaganda machine. Excellent work, recycling guy. That's why we love it. Graffiti, sleep like a baby. Yeah, there you go. I live in Florida. No, look, Bitcoin graffiti is right about that, but it is the framing, right? Like everyone that I know has some form of sleeping trouble. I don't think it's very racist. I think you could quantitatively prove what the Atlantic is saying, but it would be a stupid thing. No one should buy into the propaganda, but welcome to Clown World. Yeah. Black coffee and honey. I love honey. Give the man a like. MK says, "We love likes." And Lotus says, "I love Bitcoin." She also loves crypto, Huobi, and Bitcoin Magazine. Thank you, Lotus Chang. That's very kind. We love you too. Good morning, friends. Good morning, Tom. Coffee ready with sweet cream. I love that stuff. I can't wait to get back to Vermont to get my sweet, unhomogenized, lightly pasteurized, sometimes raw milk. Depends on where I get it from. Good morning, friends. Oh, I had a great dinner the other night with my hang out with an old law school friend. I've mentioned it yesterday. But he turned me on to some pretty good. So I didn't understand there was a Russian guy who has a fourth turning frame as well. Predates the Americans. The Americans probably plagiarized it, probably. So I'm going to read that, and he's also reading the Democracy in America right now, and he had some interesting things in there about some of the stuff we talk about here. So I'm going to bring it in. Yeah, this is the Maslow's hierarchy. Fiat pulls you down. So here we're talking about the health and wealth piece, and exactly what I said, that individuation and um, Bitcoiners reaching a psychological space where they can help others is there. But nevertheless, the foundation is health and wealth of each individual, right? Which is why Satoshi's invention is so wonderful, because you don't have to change, right? Bitcoin changes you, but you don't have to change to use Bitcoin. You don't have to do anything in particular, right? Oh yeah, Laszlo's part of the Maslow's. What am I talking about? South Africa. Oh, Saudi Aramco, third largest company in the world. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, yeah. I knew it was big in market cap. Yeah, I believe Europe was diverting most of the grain away from Africa. Uh, yeah. Yeah, I think so. Too much spending power. Where is my mansion? Yeah. uh, the aim is to divide the continent among their oligopoly. They aren't fooling everyone. Lots of fertility grains come from Ukraine, so the prices of fertilizer have gone up. Yeah, lots of fertilizer in grain. The Germans could have had cheap Russian gas. No, they didn't want it. They did not want it. Yeah, this is the gas stove thing is absolutely related. Cloud Casino is making the point here. Ever wonder why they wanted to ban gas stoves? It's because America uses half of its natural gas on cooking, and American has price protection on American natural gas that makes it 1/3 of the cost. So it's just that's what we were saying here at Cloud Casino. We covered the stoves are the you're gonna die of your propane stove thing very heavily on the breakup. We were big fans of those stories, and so we covered that one very, very closely, and we suggested it was this. We suggested it was this, right? America just finished all imports, and yeah, yeah. It's obvious the speaker has never traveled to or lived in the so-called third world. Is that me? Are you saying I never have? Hate to break it to you, art of Egyptian metaphysics, ancient, which I love. I'm a big lover of ancient Egyptian metaphysics. If you want some great antediluvian content, we do a lot of pyramid stuff here. So, and ancient Egypt, of course, we believe in ancient civilizations. So, we love that kind of stuff, and we talk about it all the time. But I have spent a lot of time in the so-called third world. If you were talking about me. Red states were targeted by pharma by lots of for the eradication of conservatives by death and disease. Thanks to, I wouldn't go that far. I would not go that far. I would not go that far. It's clown world is explains it just as fine. You don't need to put malice, which can be explained by incompetence. That old expression. Not sure how they're going to do that when people are waking up. It's only a matter of time. Yeah, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. Only a matter of time, and it's happening quick. It's like the 30 billion cubic feet a year of average. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good morning, Goblin Dude. Good morning, Goblin Dude. Yeah. Bitcoin has no CEO. It's pure truth. We believe that. We believe that. Nolan, have you talked about it a little bit? And I was pleased. Have you read Romans 12:9? No, Goblin Dude, but I will after this. All right. I think if it's the one you sent me, I did read it. I'm just not remembering. It's not remembering. The breakup is good for my mental health and wealth. Thank you, Robert. Robert, that's what we're here for. We're here for your mental health and wealth. We love it. Yeah. And about the war going on. We talked about it yesterday a little bit. But we're definitely going to be following that all the time, Goblin Dude. We're big fans of that. Um, we're looking into that. The German I know validates that saying. I think we're talking about the Dostoevsky one. Yeah. Tron is the big. Yeah, Tron looks like a pretty big scam. Hex. Yeah. Well, that guy is just. Oh God, I can't look at him. Down to Earth. I do really enjoy the top prospects. Yeah. Thought prospects. Yeah. I wonder who is tweeting for Biden. Not sure. Nobody good. Here we got some bread. I can give up pasta, just not bread. I know. I love my bread. My wife makes bread for us, for our family. Is it good? Love it. The microscope is definitely getting better. BTCers are the honing edge. Not always right, but digging deeper and not being easily influenced by propaganda. Yeah, that's what I was saying yesterday. With George Gammon actually didn't responded to my video yesterday to me, and look, that's all I was trying to say is that Bitcoiners, what George Gammon was worried about. Oh, what if Klaus Schwab says something good about crypto? Are you going to love him too? Right? Bitcoiners can tell the difference. Like that's kind of the point here. We are getting this microscope that, if someone says something good, we're gonna repeat it, but I don't think anyone's hanging their hat on what Larry Fink says about Bitcoin, right? And you're free to use it to validate your theory, right? I mean, isn't that what everyone does all the time? Like the only things I read in science are things that validate my biases, right? That's what we do. Like, I try to trigger myself into cognitive dissonance all the time. It's helpful, right? It's fortifying, anti-fragility. I at least believed Trump was mad tweeting in all caps from the toilet. That part of the Trump shtick, I believed. Yeah. Okay, audio's good, everyone. Thanks. Once you make your own breads, it's just hits different. It does. Yeah. My wife's bread when it comes out of the oven, boy, everyone is just so happy. The kids, me, we all come in. It's the best. Recycling guy. Yeah, we'll look for that. Thanks for the advice, Shiva. Fix the money, fix the world. Indeed. V says voting makes no choice. Well, I think it does. No, I'm not saying voting gives you is a 100% path to salvation, but we're going to leverage it for a Bitcoin standard. It's just one of those systems, right? What are the ancient books behind? Yeah, a little bit of Pilgrim's Progress. A lot. I think it's a Bible right there for sure. Yeah, it's got to be a Bible on that stand. My in-laws' reading room, Bible reading room, and other stuff. All right, team. I'm not going to make it to the end of these. Is Fauci Jewish? Yes. Asking for a friend. The fact that the Guberman is lashing out at the Kennedy is not surprising at all. Not at all. It's so black or white, right or wrong with them. They're capable of. They're not. Yeah, not capable. Yeah. We love you, Nolan. Thank you, V. We like it. Let's get more likes. We love likes. All right. Good morning, prosperity. All right. I got no ancient aliens. No, I don't believe in ancient aliens. I don't. Yeah, I try and do research into all the pyramids. I love them all. The Chinese ones I want the most interested in, the most in. The Chinese ones are of great interest to me. Boo Boo says peace. David Hunter, glad you're around, David. We will always have gas, but the powerful is monopolizing it for themselves. Energy uses by the masses will be rationed. I hope not. I think we're going to break through, and I think Bitcoin can help us. That's actually the path to hyper Bitcoinization. That's the health and wealth. The health and wealth incentive that Bitcoin offers is the energy. We're going to control the energy, right? We're going to measure energy in Bitcoin. That's the psychological control. Rule number 1, hodl Bitcoin. Rule number 2, murder your heroes. Yeah, I like that frame exactly. For some reason I say kill your babies because it's a writing expression from Stephen King and others that you kill the things you love. If you want good writing, you have to kill, if you wrote it and you love it and it doesn't fit, you got to get over that. You gotta get the right thing in there and not just because you loved what you wrote. Did Jesus love Bitcoin? He sure did, Bitcoin Dad. Remember what Jesus does, right? Where did Jesus go? What got him killed? He went to the temple, and what did the temple become? A money lending place. He went and upturned the tables where the people were lending money in the temple, that the church had been supplanted by money, was what he was protesting. That's what got him killed. So ever since he was gone, it's been the inevitabilities have been death and taxes, right? Bitcoiners will tell you it's Jesus and Bitcoin, right? So there you go. All right, team. That's what I got for today. I'll see you all tomorrow. We're going to have a great day. I hope you all have a great day. Amen, brother. Thanks a lot, guys.